Well, hi, Rich. Thanks for joining us here.
Yeah, glad to be here. How are you?
I'm terrific. It's good to see you. So, we always like to start off our podcast with this particular question and ask our guests about their journey into the industry. So, take it away, Rich. Tell us, how did you begin working with early care and education?
Yeah. So I count my experience as a parent and a professional together here. Been with Kangarootime now for about 2.5 years. Before that, I say I was a dad for 8. One of the first people that knew that my wife and I were expecting was our childcare center director. As is the case, the wait lists were crazy. Um, like I said, been with Kangarootime for about 2.5 years. Before that, I've had experience on the parent side, and now what I've learned in the last 2.5 years as a professional is sometimes parents are more needy or less needy. So I really didn't have any negative feedback from our director. I don't know if we were easy parents or not. Maybe they were just hiding some stuff from us, but I've been in software for going on 7 years, I think. Whew, man, 7 years, and before that. I actually, I was in manufacturing. So yeah, I was in the food industry, and then I made the hop over to software and higher education. Uh, and my next move was out of higher education into early childhood education. So I've sort of bookended the education market, and K through 12 is, somewhere in the middle there that I really haven't had much experience in that one. So
Well, I love this. Tell me a little bit more about the manufacturing job. That's interesting. I didn't expect that.
I know, yeah. I born and raised in Buffalo, New York, and I know some reactions might be out. Yes, we do get some snow, but it is sunny out, and it's a beautiful fall day in Buffalo. There is a global food manufacturer here called Rich Products, actually, and it's not my company or anything like that. But yeah, so I did about a decade in product management over there in frozen foods and that sort of stuff, and then decided that I was interested in technology, and an opportunity presented itself to get into higher education and do something. Um, I like to make not more impactful per se, but like dealing with higher education and software is a little bit different than frozen food manufacturing. So I was just excited for a little bit of a change, and then it just built from there. Someone that I worked at in the higher education space moved into early childhood education, and here I am 2.5 years later, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, that's because early care and education is the best industry in the world.
It is the people phenomenal. I will say you will not meet you'll be hard pressed to meet better people out there because it's just full of love and care, and it's all heart. And
I agree.
yeah, it's
I
incredible.
agree. Yeah, I too. I share your passion for this industry, and the people of this industry are the most nurturing, driven, passionate people I've ever met, and they're so willing to sacrifice on behalf of children. It gives you a feeling of renewed faith in mankind
Yes,
just working
yeah.
with them, right? Yeah. So
You
our
need that
topic
every once in a
today,
while.
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Our topic today is building strong teachers with a culture of success. And so, Rich, get us started. Could you explain the importance of, of this topic?
Yeah. Recently, Kangaroo Time made an acquisition, Care by Clay, and we're a 10-year-old company, and Scott Wayman founded the company again 10 years ago with the vision of just equipping early childhood educators in any sense with the tools they needed to be successful. The first sort of wave of that, so to speak, was around the operations side, so attendance, billing, parent apps, communication, and all that. And he built a great product. Well, I'm a little biased. We have a great product, right? But we took the opportunity to purchase Clay. Clay is essentially continuing to deliver on our vision of helping educators thrive any way that we can through technology and data. Right? It goes a little bit beyond just the technology and the tool. But Clay put us at the heartbeat of the classroom. Um, And because of that acquisition, we have, I'll use renewed, but we've always had a sense of heightened purpose around making educators successful. But this just continues down that line, and falls right in line with our mission and vision here, to help the actual educators in the classroom be successful at what they do day in and day out. Cindy, it's challenging out there for a variety of reasons. The main sort of challenge, or one of the top challenges out there, is labor and everything that goes into that term, right? Availability of labor, management of talent. Do they have the right onboarding? Are they equipped properly to handle child's needs today? And Clay very much puts us at the forefront of that conversation around, equipping the most experienced or the least experienced teacher or educator in the classroom with the technology they need and are familiar with, to be able to feel like they can succeed and connect with the children today. So the topic that I'm passionate about, I love to talk about. The quote that I use regularly, I think I stole this one from Danielle Millman, actually, but teachers are the glue of any organization, and it's just been reaffirmed by all the conversations that I've had. If you have great teachers in the classroom and great talent at your center, everything else, it falls into line, so to speak. Right now, you don't have to focus so much on putting out those frontline fires, because you have the right people, the right processes in place, that sort of stuff to get it done. So I don't know if that helps tee up the topic, but yeah, we're excited to talk about it.
I do think so. And one of the things, as you were mentioning, there's such a labor shortage. There's such a difficult time for centers to find high quality staff and to retain them. And staff are coming in from other industries that may not give them the foundational knowledge they need in order to be successful in
Right.
their role. So I love what Kangarootime is doing in really zooming in on the heart of the early care and education industry business and supporting the development of those critical roles inside of the schools. And that is the teacher, because children get very attached to their teachers, and it's what drives families to stay engaged and to stay
Yeah.
consistent and loyal and working with and oftentimes referring other families there. So I have two kind of quick follow-up questions
Sure.
for you. I just happened to have a conversation over the last couple of days around, we get teachers in, they come from other industries such as retail or restaurant servers. They're young people, and they kind of think, okay, well, I'm going to take this job or role,
Right.
but they don't think of it immediately as a long-term career path, because they don't know whether or not there is something here that can help them grow in their career. And so would you say that Clay is going to help those kinds of newbies coming into the childcare industry kind of develop that passion, figure out what kinds of roles and opportunities and how to kind of further saturate themselves in learning the protocols of early care and education?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think a great point, rather. Short answer, yes. Long answer, long-winded answer coming here. So, Clay, or the educator side of Kangarootime, is designed for exactly that. So you can have Miss Karen, who's been there 25 years, who can use the coaching portion of Clay as more or less a digital coach. Any types of questions. Now that's 25 years of experience, so I can almost guarantee you the questions are going to be a little different versus someone who's exploring what they want to do. And I might be getting a little ahead here, but the conversations that we all have is, first and foremost, understand why you're in this space and what you do better than anybody in the market to be successful as an owner or a director, right? So you're talking about brand, you're talking about purpose. And even if younger associates or teachers want to get into your center, you should have that understanding pretty upfront on what you stand for and what that means to join the team. That being said, and assuming all of that falls in line through interview process and all that sort of stuff, um, what Clay, the educator experience in Kangarootime allows anybody to do is go in there and produce in under 30 seconds a variety of activities, a variety of experiences you can do with the children. You can ask it any question, and you'll get back a specific early childhood education answer. And what does that do? A couple of things. Let's say I'm 3 months on the job. I'm in the toddler room. The lead teacher calls out. The director, we're understaffed. The director's, rotating rooms just to stay in ratio. And then I don't know the curriculum well enough, or I'm not well trained, or I could see the plan for the day, but the energy of the room is a little bit different. Clay allows you, as any person in the room, depending on policies, procedures of a particular center, but to just hop on, and immediately and intuitively be impactful to the children. You can run activities for, hey, I need a 15-minute activity talking about birds for 3-year-olds through this particular education method, which adheres to a lot of schools and centers out there. And then at least you have a starting point, right? Versus
Oh, yeah.
if it wasn't there, I would be lost in the wind and waiting for the director to come and tell me what to do. Now you can we've equipped people to be able to take that initiative and start to feel a bit more comfortable in that space, and to use your descriptor, get a bit more saturated in what it feels like to actually connect with a child and be involved in the development of a child, because that's the beauty of it, versus feeling overwhelmed, like you don't even know what to do. So
Yeah.
Clay definitely can play a role there. Yeah.
Oh, I would see that as being absolutely life changing. Having owned my own centers and been teacher in the classroom, I can very, very much relate to that experience of being plunked down into a classroom that I wasn't necessarily prepared for,
Right.
but needed to step in and fill a gap. And during any day, your own personal life is weighing on your mind in the background, and even though you may have been, trained or educated in the field, you might have that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I got to come up with something. And it sounds like Clay is just your back end brain for prompting you to do the right thing at the right time in the right kind of category. So I'm curious, is this an AI generated tool? And if so, you spoke a minute ago about methodology. Is Clay gathering these activities from specific sources that we might know or that we might recognize?
Yeah, so it is an AI technology. It's built on an AI platform, and the co-founders of Clay started working on it about a year and a half ago, and it's only gotten better. The guardrails have gotten more sophisticated as the product continues to get used. I would say, I forget the stat, and Marissa's going to kill me on this one, but nobody kills anybody at Kangarootime, just for a disclaimer. All right, just a saying there. But it pulls from open source data, and it sources where it pulls from. So absolutely will you see, more familiar sources that it uses, but it also starts to build on itself as well in sort of that AI fashion, right? And I
Love it.
will say, the thing about AI, that acronym, and it can, different ends of the spectrum depending on who you're talking to, right? But the way that I've sort of taken to AI, both in professional settings around Kangarootime and the team here, as well as we're developing technology, it's more accretive versus dilutive. What I mean by that is, like, it turns a team of 2 into a team of 5. It doesn't allow you to go from a team to 2 to 1, right?
Right.
So just it enhances the capability of a lot of the folks that are starting to embrace this technology, to the point where, a current customer of ours, big fan of Kangarootime, and we are as well. Her, Frances Powell, she's using Clay, and she had mentioned that her educators now don't necessarily spend as much time on the creation portion of lesson plans and activities, but on the implementation side of things, right? So, yeah, like the top number that has been thrown out to me is 3 to 5 hours a week has been
Oh,
shifted away from the creation. Again, not replacement, a starting point. Like in this particular platform, you can edit, you can shift, you can change. Miss Karen that's been there 20 years can put her own spin on things. You know what I mean? Like it's not
yeah.
take this, do it, and good to go. It gives you a step by step, but you can change things around in there. Um, and then they focus on the connection with the child.
Yeah.
So to the point where her and I were having a conversation here recently, and she was just absolutely thrilled with her quality ratings. Person was coming in to observe the classroom, and because they were able to shift the time to the implementation and actual like connection with the child and what's working and what's not versus the creation side, um, a huge difference in just the overall mood of the room, tenor of the room, like just above and beyond in a positive way. So, is it AI generated? Absolutely. But we've built the technology to be specific to early childhood educators, and you'll be able to understand where the sources are for the most part.
I love that. I mean, I think what Kangaroo Time is offering educators is hours and hours of time back in their day where they can do what they're truly passionate about, which is connecting with the
Right.
children and implementing the lesson plan and the activities that they have been spending so much time planning. So that's brilliant. It's all in the execution.
Right.
How can effective onboarding processes go beyond the initial weeks to ensure long-term success and integration for our new teachers?
Yeah, yeah. So I had the opportunity, the pleasure of hosting our virtual conference here recently, Hop, and in that particular line of thinking, we had some pretty good conversations around how do you make teachers successful. So again, the big thing, and I'll go back to an earlier point made, just understanding your brand, your purpose, sort of how you want to bring people into the team, make sure they understand your values. That goes sort of assuming that is smooth. Onboarding has changed, right? So the big flavor in the panel discussion there was around getting the right people and making sure that they're trained, and then train them again, and then train them again, and then ask how they're doing and train them again. So onboarding in and of itself isn't sort of a start and end, it's an always. That's at
Yeah.
least my interpretation of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have like robust onboarding procedures. And we're not talking 90-minute videos anymore. I think all of them agreed, like, you're talking to TikTok and attention spans here. So I think you need to design your onboarding to the talent that you are acquiring and adjust. And the big takeaway for me was, you hire for the right attitude, and you're going to teach them to be a great teacher. And then it's check-ins along the way too. So you get the right person who understands your values. You get them trained up. You get them in the classroom. There's some folks out there do shadow programs that are very effective if you have the luxury of doing that, right? Like there's a spectrum here of potential ideas and possibilities, and then you revisit at a pretty regular cadence. And then the last thing, I know we're going to continue talking about this, but I really like the idea of stay interviews. So I,
I
I
do
do
too.
think, I do think stay interviews are crucial. You're catching people that still believe in the brand and the purpose. Why are you staying here? And you can get some really interesting feedback that you can then loop back around and enhance your onboarding process. And that just having a stay interview and connecting with people on a personal level goes above and beyond. I would argue what the majority of the market does today from a talent standpoint.
I couldn't agree with you more. During the course of my career, I've always believed that if you can, during any initial engagement, whether it be with a client or a potential employee,
Yeah.
interview them for their attitudes, for their values, for their passions, for the things that you have in alignment. So if you know your own values and then those values align during the interview, and you have shared goals, shared mindset, everything else can be taught, but you
Yeah.
can't correct a bad attitude, just with
Yep.
training. That's not something that's necessarily going to be successful. So, what I'm envisioning is that Clay will really probably enable these early education schools to attract higher quality employees, because they're going to have this tool readily available to support that teacher that's new in the classroom, that wants to do a dedicated, great job. But it's always been a struggle, really, for educators to find the time and be
Yeah.
consistent in spending the time that it was required to prepare. So now, with having Clay in your back pocket and mitigating that, I think they'll attract a higher quality level of person into their organizations to begin with, and they'll be able to stoke the fire of that passion and win together. So I just love what I'm hearing you say. I think it if I still owned my centers, I certainly would be looking at Kangarootime and Clay. But that's because I've always loved the Kangarootime pink T-shirts too. So
Yeah. Oh,
somewhere
yeah.
along the line, someone's going to send me one of those. But
A lot of
it
demand there. There's a lot of demand for pink t-shirts. Just one additional thought that popped in as you were talking was um, the other thing that's critical, and I'll kind of go to the product and how the product can help sort of continue to set up that environment for success. So on the coach side, one of the things that differentiates Clay, the educator experience here at Kangaroo Time, is more about you can submit any question. You can submit any question, and then the technology tracks the question, and basically you get visibility. You get visibility into the types of questions your educators are asking. Like in the classroom, like you cannot ask for more valuable information than the types of questions that people are asking. I'll call it in the classroom, in the field, and then that way you can start to absorb what those questions are and have conversations in general, because data integrity. What we don't do, we sort of we we had an interesting internal conversation on whether to share who's asking what questions. We don't want to turn into Big Brother as a technology, because we feel like the quality of the questions, the authenticity of the questions would go down, and you would lose a lot of value there. So
Yeah.
there's ways that we're shaping the product to be able to say, hey, here's some themes that you need to consider having conversations with your educators around, and then more importantly, you can feed that into your continuous improvement programs or your training programs, right? So if you're always asking, how do I talk to parents? And that just happened to be, one of the top questions across your school, your center, your network. Well, now you can produce training content around like, hey, parent to teacher communication, best practices, and it can feed itself from there. So sorry, I just wanted to add that little point. You made me think about it during your conversation as well.
Yeah, Rich, I think I'm really glad you did insert that, because honestly, that gives the leadership the opportunity to understand where the gaps are in what their staff has retained from their training. And
Yes.
then they could choose a different pathway too, to re-delivering that same content. So maybe instead of a training, they do a role play.
Yeah.
Instead of just a training, they do some video interactions together where they're role playing it out, videotaping each other, and allowing the team to kind of coach one another. And now you're leveraging the genius of the entire staff all at the same time, bringing
Yeah.
a cohesive and team spirit to all of that. Because in childcare, unlike any other industry, anything that could get thrown at you during the course of a day, it's so random, it's so varied, that it's
Yeah.
really difficult to train for every potential scenario, because you just don't know what may actually come up during the day. So I really think that that's a beautiful thing. I think that's terrific. I wanted to ask you, in what ways can measurement and accountability be implemented to help educators thrive and maintain high standards?
Yeah, so this is one where, and just shout out to Rachel Sapala on this one. I know she's pretty passionate about scorecards. I am as well professionally. They've um, the it forces you to think and approach the day a little bit differently, right? So when you're putting together a scorecard, I don't care the quality of the scorecard. Just get something together and start having conversations, because you will see very quickly either how much people understand the business and what's important to the business, or there's a lack of knowledge and we need to bring everybody up to speed. And it also provides the opportunity to keep the conversation objective and measurable. So if you have, like, from a center, even when ownership days, there were certain key metrics that you were always looking at on a daily basis. And scorecarding is that methodology to be able to bring the most important metrics to the forefront of a conversation, get everybody on the same page, sort of pointed and rowing in the same direction, and then just start to have iterative conversations around what are we doing here? How does this impact this? Can we improve this? Are we doing well here? And that all comes back to a cohesive team, values, brand. So once you have the right team in place, and you help them, the collective help now, like you everybody helps each other understand what's important in the business, and then you can objectively measure it through time and just sort of tinker with it, right? On my team, um, it's been immensely valuable. Like there's anecdotal conversations on the marketing side, like, hey, we have these conversion rates, organic traffic, or whatever. But then you naturally have the question of, like, all right, why is this important? What does this mean? And it continues to snowball in a very healthy way, until you reach a point where, like, okay, that's what really matters to the business, or like that's how I'm going to be measured as an educator. So I know when I walk into the classroom, the toddler room, and I'm 21 years old, and I'm looking to find my way, and I think this is my spot. Now I know at least what my leaders, what my managers expect from me, so that I can hold myself more accountable. And then when the time comes to have those one-on-one connections, those stay interviews, it's not a surprise, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's incredibly powerful to have, scorecards in place. It could be a simple Word document. You don't have to get crazy with it. It's something
Right.
that the sophistication builds through time. The hardest part is getting started, and then you'll start to see that progress build over time in a very healthy way.
Yeah, and I think earlier too, and I can't recall now, Rich, when we were having this particular dialogue, but I think in early care and education, because so many of the community are nurturers, right?
Yeah, yeah,
They're these nurturing, loving, positive, wanting to always help others reach their goals. They struggle to have those frank conversations and be the
right.
strong leaders that maybe they should be. And so can you help, can you dive into that a little bit and talk just a little bit more about how these scorecards and some of what we've been discussing here today can actually empower those early educators, as leaders,
Yeah.
and to have those frank conversations. And to be quite frank with you, I'm a very direct person, and in talking with you, I've recognized my person, right? We are very direct with one another. And so I don't think we have any challenge with having a frank conversation, but
Yeah.
it's been something that I've identified for many other peers that I've worked with, that they struggle to have that frank conversation about what's working, what's not working, and to help lead that person to seeing it as an opportunity. So, do you want to share anything else around that portion of the topic?
Yeah. So, and I'm sort of, yeah, smashing everything together from every conversation that I've had here. So I think in my personal and professional experience, when I had joined the first technology company in higher education, I inherited a team. Uh, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was more of like a turnaround story with the team. So I had to learn pretty quick, right? And I say that because it takes time, and that's okay. But I do think you know we'll kind of look through the lens of candid conversations for a second. I do think having the knowledge around the business and what makes your business successful, right? So just defining what success means for your business, for your center, goes a long, long way. And then you build off of that as the foundation around, like, okay, here's how we define what success is. And then you continue to build off of that as a group with your leaders, right? And you will know, at least in my experience, I knew fairly quickly where the talent was and where the interest was, right? So you have
Yeah.
people, I'll kind of loop it back to attitude for a second. You have people, folks out there that just want to learn. They just want to continue to improve and learn, and they ask the right questions. They're willing to dig in and get dirty in the trenches, so to speak, to learn the business. And then you have those folks who, and this is okay too, who just want to know how they get measured and do a great job, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the ability to have the conversations collectively and identify what's important as a group automatically increases the buy-in and the comfort level associated with having those tough conversations or great conversations. Candidly, like, it doesn't all need to be, well, you're not doing this or you need to improve here. The flip side is also true. Like, you're doing a phenomenal job. Like, you are crushing this number, or like, tell me more about what you're doing because I want to make sure the whole team knows. Really well done. But back to difficult conversations, you set up a scorecard, and let's say the director at a particular center is responsible for enrollment. I'd like I'll just throw that scenario out there. Some of it's true, some of it's not. But now they know that you have measurements like a good, better, best. So there's no surprises. So when you have a conversation with them, it's about some things that have always worked for me personally. And I don't know, Cindy, your experience on this, but I always ask the question, well, tell me how you think things are going, you know,
Yeah.
based on the results. I'm not like slide the paper across and be like, how do you think things are going? Like, there's always going to be a sense of how things are going. And that way it opens up the dialogue and allows people to give their perspective on a particular situation. And that, I have found, has taken me 90% of the way there.
Yeah.
Around, like, okay, you're aware that there's a scenario, you've given me a little bit of context, like, let's talk about like any ideas or thoughts that you have on how you want to either turn things around or continue to double down on something because you think it's going to work, and here's why, right?
Yeah.
um, the 10%, the last mile, where you get into those tough conversations. One of the things that was taught to me is you be upfront and you say, hey, listen, I want to have a difficult conversation with you. Is that okay? And it just, now the expectations are set that it's going to get a little uncomfortable, and it's going to get a little, hey, a little challenging on both sides, right? Because there's always going to be two perspectives on things. And then, I'm seeing all the cliche stuff here, but it does work. Like, tell me, help me understand what you were thinking here, or I thought you and I were aligned on this one, and it just doesn't seem like now we're on the same page. What's changed? And always try to avoid like associating it with the person themselves, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I noticed that you were sloppy in the presentation. I don't know, some feeble, versus like, I noticed your presentation was a little sloppy, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit different, right? So
Completely.
um, I I enjoy having the good conversations. I really do. Like when everybody's on the same page, even if some things are going a little off and everybody's aware, at least the expectation is there that now you need to sit down and have some more conversation around how to remedy the situation. But and then I'll just make this point one last time. Like, you will know pretty quickly who's ready to engage with you in a fruitful conversation versus people who are less receptive. And then you need to change a little bit of that approach. But on the teacher side in early childcare, uh, I've never owned or managed a childcare center, but I'd imagine if you hire for the right attitude, a lot of the times the conversation will be cordial, and a bit more. It'll be amicable. Like, if you're both in it for the right reasons, you're going to come to a conclusion that benefits everybody, including, more importantly, the teacher or the educator that you're talking to at that particular moment. I threw a lot out there. I sort of combined a lot of things, but in my experience, um, you I'll say you demystify those conversations by having alignment around what it is that matters to the business. When people
Yeah.
don't know what a good job means, what their job is, what the expectations are, you are setting yourself up for some very difficult conversations.
Yeah, so Rich, I think you circled it up and tied it in a bow. Basically, what you're saying is set clear expectations often that align with the values and goals of the business. Check in with the team to ensure they're on track for delivering those expectations that help everyone get to the goal. And then don't shy away from having that frank, direct conversation. If someone's gotten a little off track, do it early. Don't wait for them to get way off the path, but ask them if you can have that frank conversation to help them get back on track so they're still headed toward the goal and aligned with the rest of the team. I think you did an excellent job on that. I am going to throw you for a loop here, though, because you said you got a team that you had to turn around. Give me 3 tips that you would give any early education leader for turning a team around. So maybe one that's derailed or
Yeah.
gotten into a habit of negativity or anything else that you want to share. 3 tips to turn around a team.
Oh man, on the spot here. I mean, everything hasn't been scripted up to this point, so I think, which I enjoy. The turnaround situation I inherit. So there's a couple of ways, a couple of scenarios here. I'm going to assume, for the time being, that this person was promoted into a position of leadership through the center,
Mm-hmm.
which changes things a little bit because they used to be your peers. Um,
Right. Yeah, good point.
so versus when my first experience, I was hired in externally,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a little bit different. But I would
Well,
say,
you could take it from a new center
yeah,
director being hired into a
there
team
you go.
where that former center director was well loved and maybe they're resenting this replacement a little bit.
Yeah, okay, okay. So, tough situation,
Yeah.
and I would make it a point, first and foremost, and I don't know particulars here, but I'd imagine you'd want to get to know everybody at a personal level, and that will take time. But
Mm-hmm.
I would start with the lead teachers and the people who have been there the longest. So, even just tenured folks, just to get a temperature of the situation.
Yeah.
Hey, like, if you go in there and you just start changing everything because you know best, I mean, it's going to be bad news really, really quick. So if you go into a situation, seek to understand how you got to this particular point and why, to the extent possible, right? There's rational thought all around you. One idea could seem like a bad idea now, but a fantastic idea a year ago, right? So I think building the context and the relationships around you, I don't know if you put a time to it, but within the first 30 days, maybe a little bit longer than that, you will start to get a sense through those conversations on where people are,
Yeah.
as you continue to build those relationships and see people in action. Now, if it's the first conversation with like a new boss per se, of course you're going to be more reserved, but through time you'll start to loosen up. But at least you'll start again to get the temperature of the situation. So that would be my first sort of move, if you will, is just get
Mm-hmm.
to know the center, the
Yeah.
dynamics in the center, all the little idiosyncrasies that go into that particular school, right? I would even go so far, get almost as important as get to know the families, the children,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
just holistic ecosystem that you've just inherited there. Um, Assuming that the results aren't there and you need to work on a turnaround, right? Is sort of the scenario we're talking about. I would start to dig into the knowledge of the folks within the school and hey, help me understand what you think is important to the business. Like, how do you consider this is impacting that? Just start having those deeper conversations with folks. And again, I do think you'll come in with a sense of the levers, for sure, but you'll have questions that are sort of poking at certain areas of the school or the center, and you're going to poke a nerve or two eventually,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you'll get down to a couple of key areas that you can focus on. So
Yeah.
kind of a blend of step one, expanding the relationship, getting to know the ecosystem, but then identify a couple of quick wins. Um, Something you can do that's I don't even necessarily have to say different than the previous administration, but something you can do to continue to build the credibility with the team that you're in it for the right reasons and everybody wants to take care of the children, help the children develop, right? Just kind of rally around that goal, that value, that sort of your why as an organization, and get some quick wins out there. I
Yeah.
think, and it doesn't need to be huge. It doesn't need
No.
to be gigantic process changes, standard operating procedures. Now, this is assuming no fires, no big fires either. So, right, right.
Right.
So, in a perfect world, which isn't the case ever, um, so get to know your folks, the situation, aim for some quick wins to build some credibility, and then bring the team together and understand and assume positive intent as you continue to move down the path toward. We'll funnel it towards scorecarding as an example, and the comment that I made earlier. Like, you can have a PowerPoint slide, a Google sheet, however you want to do this. But the power of putting pen to paper on what matters and having people react to it, it's night and day. You can
Yeah.
sit around a table and just anecdotally have conversations in the abstract. It's almost like a different world when somebody, gets up and writes on the whiteboard or, presents an idea of like, hey, here's the top three things that I think are the low hanging fruit that we can take care of. What do you think? What's your reaction? Then you'll start to get well, here's the things you need to consider. Here's the risk, or yeah, I agree. Here's how we might be able to do that. So get to know the context, some quick wins from a credibility standpoint, and then a collective buy-in with the key players. I'm not like, can you bring every teacher along for the ride? Sure, but I don't know that that's the best way to do it. I think you need to break off into a smaller group and then start to identify the areas that you're going to work on. So, and then have the team align around those goals and then collaboratively come up with those solutions, right? Because it'll
Yeah.
be crazy. And then through that, you'll get people who just don't want to be on board, who just do not want to be on board. And this is, again, I've never run a center or a classroom, but like in my professional experience, you will just have people who do not want to get on board. And that's
And that,
when you go
yeah.
back to those difficult conversations,
But
Uh,
but you're right, Rich. And that's you did it perfectly, by the way, on the spot. You really you might not recognize how good it was, but I think for anyone running a school, they're going to identify and feel aligned with what you're saying here. It's going to resonate with them very well because they've all had that experience where you come in as a leader and the team's not doing so well, and maybe they love the former leader because the former leader allowed them to sort of lower their standards and keep kind of
right,
leaning back, right? So now you come in, and I loved what you said, because what you really said is come in with empathy and humility and build relationships, gain trust with the team that's been there a long time by asking questions and listening. So brilliant. Tip one made all the sense in the world to me. And then step two, identify some quick, easy wins to get that feeling of winning together and camaraderie, amongst the team. So you really did a beautiful job there too. Get some quick wins on the scoreboard, some easy things that you can identify to do that'll make staff feel appreciated, make staff feel engaged and a part of the new process, and then sit down with the core group that you've identified that have influence within the center to really get into the guts of what are 1 to 2 initiatives we could take on and really be successful with, that's going to build that ongoing momentum. So you did a really good
Yeah.
job, Rich, of laying that out. My next question is one that we ask all of our guests again.
Yeah.
Looking forward, what are the biggest challenges facing the sector in the next few years?
Yeah, I think about this one a lot, and I'm a LinkedIn junkie. Candidly, I kind of scroll LinkedIn a lot. That's my channel, and um, I do think I do think access to early childhood education is going to continue to remain at the forefront of any debate, because of the impact that it has holistically across the country, right? Like if people don't have access to affordable childcare, they can't work. They can't work. They don't, the economy suffers. We all know, these dynamics, and I think it's going to continue to be a challenge. But I will say I'm encouraged at the. I don't know. I've only been in the industry as a professional 2.5 years, but I get the sense that the topic is continuing to come up more often than it has in the past, which, results aside for a second, just having a conversation be more in the norm versus not is definitely a step in the right direction. So I do think accessibility to early childhood education is going to be key. I think, there's a lot of tangents off of that one. I mean, part of the access issue is around affordability. Part is around like staff availability, around capacity, childcare deserts, all that particular sort of points there. But the other thing is, parental expectations are changing. I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm an old millennial, but I'm a millennial. Depending on I'm old, but I'm an old millennial. But I am still considered I mean, call me a cusper, whatever you want to call me. But like we are just more involved. We are like we want to know more. We want instant gratification. I think everybody does now, but like it just like the parents that were going through early childhood education didn't necessarily have that expectation. Now it's very much an expectation. What's going on with my child? I want to know now. Any problems you have, I want to know now. So I do think parental expectations are going to continue to heighten. I think child behavior, it has always been at the forefront, but it'll continue to grow in importance, especially because 90% of the brain is developed in the first 5 years, and there's studies out there that prove the positive impact of a healthy environment early in a child's life, and that can pay dividends later on in many many ways. I think if we take care of children now, maybe there's less therapy required later, right? I don't know, but
Love that.
so I
Yeah.
think those are the top three. I will say compliance and regulation continue to be at the forefront as well.
Yeah.
Certain states, you know better than I do, and you all do a
Mhm.
fabulous job for sure.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, yeah. So, certain states are different than others. That's always going to be the case.
Yeah.
It varies even county by county sometimes. But, solutions such as yourself help owners and directors understand what those requirements are before they really need to.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
it's like,
Well, thank you.
let's say a little bit, I don't want to say too late, but you get caught a little bit. So I think access, I think parental expectations are going to continue to increase. I do think, kind of coupled with that is child development,
Yeah.
and sort of continuing um, to hone in on that, and then compliance regulation is always going to be top of mind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are four things I don't think are going away anytime soon.
No, they're not going to go anywhere, right? It's always been kind of the double-edged sword of being in this industry. So as we finish up, Rich, we like to ask folks to share their personal motto or a motivational quote that resonates with them. So go ahead, take it away. Tell us what's Rich Sherry's
Oh,
personal motto or best motivational quote.
yeah, I have a lot of them, but and I'm a quote junkie, and
Me
it's
too.
pathetic. It's pathetic. But the one that stuck out to me a lot, that has really resonated with me and helped sort of shape my thinking, is back when I was working in the higher education space. One of the things we did to prepare for presentations was we would research universities, colleges, sort of their strategic objectives and sort of their mission, their vision. And I forget the name of the institution, but it was real simple. It was a real simple line that really drove home to me, which was, row, don't drift. And
Ooh.
it was three words that I was like, oh man. And sometimes when I hear a good quote, I write it down in the notebook and then I never revisit it. But I couldn't get this out of my mind because just think about all the entire scope of the application of that particular quote. And for me, the way that, one of the things that I like to do, both personally, and as I have the privilege of leading other teams, is two things that sort of come from that quote, right? Progress and intentionality. So anything that you do, do with intention, and then look to make progress versus, again, yourself the day before. Just small incremental changes go a long, long way through time. I mean, I'll tie it back to the small wins. People love the feeling of small wins, and it just goes a long way.
100%.
So row, don't drift is the quote that if I had to identify a top quote that's helped sort of shape my thinking and approach, I think that's it. But there's a lot. I'm a quote junkie.
Well, Rich, I love that one. I don't think I've heard it before. So, as soon as you said it, my brain really attached to it as well. I really like that. It resonates with me as well. So, as we wind up, let's just hope that everyone out there in the early education community chooses to get into the boat and roar, just
Yeah,
keep rowing and roaring away
yeah,
for our 0 to 5 year olds and
100%.
never let themselves drift into complacency.